Hey everyone, welcome to episode 2 of the OE, a weekly Call of Duty Esports show where we overextend on hot COD topics from the past week and look forward to the events that lie ahead. On this week's show, we've got hand-selected previews for some of the top matchups during Super Week, predictions for who I believe will find themselves in both the winners and the losers bracket of the upcoming first major. We'll visit the film room to take an in-depth look at how ABEZY broke OpTic's back at the end of CDL Atlanta, and we'll do our best to sort through the middle of the pack power rankings. With that, let's grab some popcorn, settle in, and let's head into our first segment, which is Movers and Shakers. All right, guys, welcome in. This is the very first edition of Movers and Shakers, and essentially, I feel like right now, we have a few teams that are probably destined for the winners bracket. We have a few teams that are probably destined for the losers bracket. But one of the biggest questions for me heading into this weekend is who needs this weekend the most? So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and I want to shift teams where I think they are at. And then we'll go through and we'll try to determine who's going to be in the winners bracket of the first majors and who's going to be in the losers bracket. So first thing that we can start with here is I feel like in the group with Dallas, the top 3 seeds are pretty set. And those 3 seeds, at least in my mind, are going to be Dallas, they're going to be Minnesota, and they're going to be 100 Thieves. I feel like these 3 teams, while they're all jockeying for who's going to be the 1 seed, who's going to be the 2 or the 3, I feel like those 3 teams are pretty set. If you look over at the other group with Atlanta FAZE, I feel like Atlanta, at least in terms of right now, is the only team that is 1,000% solidified in that winner's bracket. So let's go through and let's talk about some scenarios. So when it comes to losers bracket, you have 3 teams from each of those groups that are going to be in winners and 3 teams from each of those groups that are going to be in losers. Now, if you're talking about Dallas, the group with Dallas, Minnesota, and LA Thieves, that's going to put New York in the losers bracket. That's going to put Seattle in the losers bracket. And the one thing to really key in on here is when it comes to the winners bracket, here's the big thing. So right now, there's kind of some uncertainty we have Toronto, we have Florida, we have OpTic. So of those 3 teams, one of those has to go to the losers bracket. Now, when it comes to these 3 teams, normally at this point heading up to the major, we would have a decent idea where they're going to be. But because of the schedule that lies ahead, they end up playing each other so many times that there's so much that's up in the air. So Toronto plays Chicago on Wednesday. And then if we fast forward, Chicago also plays Florida on Sunday. So Chicago has to play both of these squads. And we all know that Chicago already has a loss to Atlanta. So if that were to continue and if they drop a match somewhere else, could they lose to LAG? I don't know. I wouldn't count on it. But if that happens, that would put them at 3 losses. Say they lose to Atlanta, LAG, and just one of these other squads because Toronto and Florida, we're not quite sure where they're at right now. But if they lose to one of them, all of a sudden, OpTic would be bumped down into the losers bracket. So if we're looking at it this way, I personally feel when it comes to these, I feel like OpTic is going to get a win over one of these squads. Now, it's not 1,000%, and I'm not even sure if they'll be the 2 seed, but I do think they're going to be one of those teams that end up making it into the winner's bracket, which means how do we feel moving forward about Toronto and Florida? And the biggest thing that I see when I look at Toronto is that their schedule that lies ahead, sure, they have Chicago, and that's obviously going to be a tough one, but they end the weekend by playing Paris, and then they turn around and they play LAG. And for me, that seems like a little bit of an easier schedule moving forward than Florida might have. So as it stands right now, I just feel like Toronto, with the easier schedule moving forward, is going to be that third team in from this group with Atlanta, which is going to put Florida over in losers. Paris is also going to be in losers, probably the lowest seed, and we'll also put LAG in losers. I'm not sure that London's going to get a victory in that other group with Dallas, Minnesota, and 100 Thieves. So when it comes to my winners and losers bracket, this is just how I see it right now. In the comments down below, let me know. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you feel like maybe OpTic is going to be the team that slips up? Do you think that Toronto might end up dropping to either LAG and Paris, which would open the door for Florida? Let me know down in the comments, because I'm super interested to see where you guys have these teams. And I guess the one other thing that we could talk about here is, how do you feel those seeds are going to be up in the winners bracket for the group with Dallas, Minnesota, and 100 Thieves? If I look at these three, right now, 100 Thieves is 2-0. They're the only team that's 2-0. But if we look at who they have moving forward, they have to play Seattle, they have to play London, and then their last matchup is against Dallas. So if they end up losing to Dallas, that would put 100 Thieves at 4-1. That would also put Dallas at 4-1. And right now, Minnesota also has a loss, because Minnesota lost to LA Thieves, which would mean all of these teams would be 4-1. The only thing that might be separating them is if you looked at total map count. If it ends up coming down to a tiebreaker and we can't really go off head-to-head and it has to go down to total map count, right now, because maps have been so close with Minnesota, and they dropped those 3 maps to LA Thieves and they dropped 2 maps to Dallas because of that, they do have 5 map losses, which might put them in this third spot. Now, the other part of this would be, who do you think is going to win between Dallas and 100 Thieves? This seems like it could go either way just based off of how each of these teams is playing so far. But I think that Dallas would end up winning that matchup. I just have a little bit more confidence in them as a whole. But I'm not sure in terms of total map count, because they do have that head-to-head loss. So do you think 100 Thieves is going to end up coming through in that matchup? Do you think it'll be a close matchup, or do you think that it might get out of hand? This is a tough one for me, but just based off of how they've performed and what we've seen from them over the last year, I'm going to keep Dallas at 1. I'm going to say that 100 Thieves is going to end up getting that 2nd seed, with Minnesota getting that 3rd seed. So again, comment down below. How do you feel about these? Agree, disagree, whatever. And without further ado, those that are familiar with my channel know that I've made my channel based on analysis that I do from a mini map. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and for the very first time, hop on over to the film room. Welcome into the film room. Again, this is where I've made my channel, my following, why people have tuned in. I take important clips, I break it down, I try to draw it out, try to make sure you're 1000% on everything that happened. And throughout every weekend and every major moving forward, I want to take what seems to be like one of the biggest clips and really explain what happened. And if it weren't for these couple plays from ABEZY, Chicago probably wins this matchup 3-1, and the story would totally be away from the fact that OpTic just got absolutely slaughtered in Search and Destroy 12 rounds to 1. But if it weren't for this play from ABEZY, we'd have a little bit of a different mindset heading into this next group of matches. So in the bottom left, you can see the mini map there. I will also bring up this map on Moscow. We'll go ahead, we'll draw through it, we'll talk through all the scenarios. But without further ado, let's go ahead and press play. And
so
as we watch this, I feel like as of right now, it just seems like to me that Atlanta was not making the plays that they needed to play. So Dashy gets a kill, Scump gets a kill, Envoy gets a kill. And at this point in time, you're looking, if you look at the minimap, OpTic has 4 players in or around this P3 hardpoint. So all you have to do is just trade kills on the way over to the P4 hardpoint. But if we look top middle, right now, there are 15 seconds left inside this P3 hardpoint, and OpTic has 2:31. So that means even if they get every single point inside of P3, Atlanta did enough to contest to get it to a P4, right? 2:31 plus 15 only gives you 2:46, and you need 2:50. So as we press play again, we're going to see that Scump and Dashy and everybody else from OpTic starts to rotate over, and that's the first big kill, right? So Dashy was looking middle, and he ends up getting a kill on Simp, which anytime you can take Simp out of a big moment like this, that's going to do well for your team. But the other part of this that just started is ABEZY got this kill on Formal. So let's go ahead and again, let's bring this up here so we can draw through it, really understand what's happening. But down here over towards P4, ABEZY's right here. And he knows that as OpTic rotates over, OpTic was inside of P3. As they rotate over, they either have to come through one of 3 routes. Now, they could take a long flank, and although it might not be advised, because if that long flank doesn't pay off, then that's really the only shot that they get, right? They could come through, they could go top Eskies and try to get a pinch from this side of the map. But again, if that's not successful, then they're probably going to end up losing that map. So they have to either come from this way. They could have ran behind through bank and come out this door. And the only other option is to come through gold and go to this jump up window. So there's only a couple options there. So if you're ABEZY, you know that if you're the person that's pushed up, he's the only one that's here. If we're talking about other people, we know Simp just died right here, and Arcides and Celium at this point in time are at these 2 locations. So right now, there are 3 people running towards ABEZY, and if he doesn't go massive, that initial hill control is probably going to end up going towards OpTic. So what does he do? He starts off with a kill right here in this choke point against Formal. And let's go ahead, let's play the rest of this video so that we can really go through and break it down. We're going to see 2 massive kills here. So we are on board with ABEZY. Scump is in this corner. He gets absolutely fried. So Scump and Dashy, we saw them running from P3 through elbow, past gold, over towards P4. Scump gets absolutely fried. And if you watch the OpTic podcast, they did talk about this play. And I'm not sure I saw it, but Dashy mentioned that he felt like he had ABEZY dead. So he actually stopped shooting in the middle of this gun battle, which allowed ABEZY to go ahead and finish that kill. Again, if he doesn't end up getting that kill, I don't know if Atlanta has enough to go ahead and finish out this map. So again, it was the same choke point. As we go back to the film room, we talked about ABEZY being here, getting the kill on Formal. Formal was the one that rushed back behind bank. So from P3 spawn, Formal rushed through here. That was the first kill. Both Dashy and Scump both rushed this way. Dashy got the kill right here on Simp. And then Scump was ahead. He went into elbow right here. That was the second kill that ABEZY got with the Krig that he picked up. And then again, in the same exact location, Dashy came in from behind. He was able to get a 3rd kill right here on Dashy. And by the time that happened, we talked about the fact that Arcides and Celium were behind. Celium was here. Now Celium is moved up inside of P4, and he's on the hard point, and Arcides is just sitting back because remember, we said they could hit through bank, they could hit through elbow, or they could go through P1. Arcides is just sitting here watching this potential pinch if OpTic were to run through mid. So with that, let's go ahead. Let's see how this plays out. But that was just a massive 3-piece. And they did get a little bit lucky. if we look down in the bottom left, we saw Simp die over here in that choke point over towards P1. And Simp did spawn over towards P3. Now, let's go back. I'll tell you what. Let's go back just 10 seconds or so. And I'm not sure I love this spawn. So again, Simp right now at this point in time spawned over here on the left-hand side. And as we're looking at that, I'm not positive that it makes a ton of sense. I know ABEZY is pushed up, but we have Formal here. You have Dashy. You have Scump. I'm not sure it makes a ton of sense why Simp would get this spawn and not spawn out over here. I guess the only real option is that it's still on those P3 spawns. So normally somebody spawns top Eskies. Normally somebody spawns over towards the left side of the map beside P3. But to me, it just seems like now the only thing that might be throwing this off is the fact that ABEZY is right here. And if you're talking about the player that's the leftmost on the map, that actually is probably ABEZY. I just don't love it. I feel like Simp should have gotten this spawn over here. So that's another thing that does end up helping them because, again, we're going to see this kill on Scump. We're going to see this kill on Dashy. And as we let it play out, it switches over to Simp. Formal would never really expect him to be there. And now they need 20 seconds. And OpTic spawned all the way out over towards P2. Again, if we're looking at location in the bottom left minimap, we have this person here, which is Simp, which is pushed up, which is kind of blocking the spawns over towards top Eskies. On this side, we have ABEZYS, who was watching the push, the flank through P1. He is still there, which is kind of blocking off this spawn. So the only thing that's left is for the game to spawn OpTic all the way out over towards P2. And at this point, they know that they have no chance but to run over towards P2. But the biggest play that was made was ABEZY just stepping up, getting Formal in that choke point, turning, getting the two-piece on Scump and Dashy. ABEZYS gets a kill, Celium, Simp, ABEZY, everybody gets a kill there, and with 1 second left, that ends up giving the victory to Atlanta in this map. And I just feel like if it was 1 or 2 kills, that's all it would have taken. And that would have been the difference in this map, right? If you're OpTic and you kill ABEZY there, you still maintain control of the left-hand side of the map, right? If we go through and we break this down just one more time, if we're here and they come through, and even if Formal, who went through bank, even if Formal dies right here, as Scump and Dashy come forward, if they're able to trade this out, there's nobody left on the left-hand side of the map, right? ABEZY would be dead. Scump or Dashy would be here. Formal would still be inside of P3. So they would have control of this left-hand side of the map. And once they have that, they could regroup. Even though ABEZYS and Celium were pushed up, right? If we think ABEZYS at this point in time, Celium were here, even though they were pushed up, they don't necessarily have any power positions that are going to get these choke points here. So if they're able to trade that out, they could wait for Formal, they could reset, and then all hit it at one time and get control of P4. So that's the play. These are the things I want to do in Film Room. It really does come down to one series of gunfights there, and if OpTic's able to win that, that would have been a 3-1 victory, but we all know it went to that map 5 search and destroy, and from there, Atlanta was basically untouchable in a sense. You get Atlanta in a map 5 search and destroy, they are a squad that is just super clutch, really tough to beat in that moment. We saw it all throughout Modern Warfare last year, and they're continuing it this year. So that is Film Room. Any comments on this one, put them down below. Next, we want to talk a little bit about power rankings. I feel like at this point in time, we have 1, 2, and 3, maybe 4 somewhat sorted. And when it comes to the 9, 10, 11, 12, so when it comes to 8 through 12, that's a different story. But the hardest part for me right now is trying to decide where these middle squads go. So at this point in time, where do you put? I think most people would agree that we have Florida, we have LA Thieves, we have Minnesota, we have Toronto, but where do you put them? So let's just take it team by team and we'll really work through this. But right now, as it stands, the first team I want to talk about is LA Thieves. And if we're talking about LA Thieves, they're obviously 2-0. They got that opening victory over New York. And the second victory that they got was a 3-0 over, or sorry, they got the opening victory over Minnesota. They got the 3-0 victory over New York. But the question mark that I have hanging over the heads of LA Thieves is the fact that that 3-0 victory over New York was not one of the most dominant things that I've ever seen. When it came to the hard point, it was 250 to 244, I believe. So they got a 6-point victory there. When it came to the control, they had to absolutely clutch up in the control to gain the victory there. Then when it came to the search and destroy, they clutched up in the round 11. They won the search and destroy 6-5. So you might think, well, if I'm just looking at it overall, right now I believe they have a 6-1 map count and a 2-0 overall record. So you think, well, without a doubt, let's just go ahead and let's put LA Thieves as that fourth best team. But let's talk about some others. So let's talk about Minnesota, because this is a squad that I think is going to be there throughout the entirety of the year. If we're talking about Minnesota, they started off and they had that loss to LA Thieves. No doubt about it. You can't hide from it. You can't run from it. You can't talk about how unimportant it is or whatever. They flat out got beat. It is what it is. But they did come back, and of these four teams, I don't think that you can argue anything whatsoever. They also have the most impressive victory with their win that they had in that map 5 over the Dallas Empire. But again, when it comes to Minnesota, they have some deficiencies. So obviously, right now, they're one of the hottest search teams in the game. Haven't lost a search and destroy. They're basically blowing everybody out in search and destroy. And when it comes to this squad in specific, part of the reason why they're so good is because every single one of their players is not only super clutch, but most of them have been around the scene for a long time, and no moment is too big for them. So we saw in that Garrison search and destroy against the Dallas Empire, we saw accuracy get a 2-piece that led to winning a round. We saw Attach jump from top green, hit a flank, get a 2-piece in the middle of the map that won them a round. We also saw Major Maniac kind of hiding over in P4 underneath top green. He looks up. There are 2 people there. That's another 2-piece. So when it comes to Minnesota, yes, they lost the head-to-head to 100 Thieves, which is why right now I have them under 100 Thieves, but they also have the most impressive victory. So let's not forget about that when we talk about all of these things coming into play. Now, other 2 teams that are left, these are teams that are kind of toss-ups, and these are teams that we're going to figure out a little bit more about throughout the rest of this weekend. So again, I really do wish that we had maybe just one more week under our belts, because that would tell us a little bit more about both of these squads. But these 2 squads, they started off Monday, each of them. So Florida got a 3-1 victory over LAG, which didn't look great at the beginning. Map 1, they ended up dropping, I believe it was Crossroads Hardpoint. And there is a key to victory, or at least there's something that I look for when it comes to Florida. And basically, so far throughout the year, Skies and Awakening have been unbelievably consistent. They come out, they fry. In that matchup on Monday with LAG, those 2 were just phenomenal. I think Skies had like a 1.2 or a 1.3. I mean, he just played really well. Awakening also played really well. But in the hard point on Crossroads that they lost in that first matchup, they did not get anywhere near what they needed to get from Neptune and Slacked. And eventually, as the match went on, they won the next 3 maps, and they ended up taking that series 3-1. But what I've seen developing so far is that you kind of know what you're going to get out of Skies and Awakening. And as long as Slacked and Neptune can make plays and pull their own weight, they can beat basically anybody. But is that going to happen time and time again? And then when it came to Toronto, at first glimpse, you might look and say, well, Toronto ended up losing 3-1 to Atlanta. That was a pretty bad beat. But they were one rotation away from taking the map 1 hardpoint. And that's a big deal, because if they end up winning that map 1 hardpoint, all of a sudden, not only are they up 1-0, but they also, it wasn't even close, beat Atlanta in the raid, search, and destroy. This was the match where it was raid, the first 3 maps to start. And eventually the control, Atlanta absolutely blew them out. The second hardpoint on Garrison, Atlanta blew them out like 250 to 120. But if that gets to the final search and destroy, who knows what happens there, right? So if you're just going through and you're just looking at the match results, you might think, all right, 3-1 victory. Atlanta looks great. Toronto didn't do what they were supposed to do. But it was much closer than that. It was a 250 to 247 victory. We're going to take a peek at it here in a minute. But if one rotation goes a different way, Toronto was inside P5 on raid. They looked like they were 3 seconds away from winning. All of a sudden, Atlanta hits from all 4 angles. They end up trading out the kills. They get set up in P4. Everybody has to run through kitchen to get back to P5. And that was all she wrote. So, although it looks like a 3-1, this was a pretty good performance out of them. And we all know that when it comes to the head-to-head, Toronto did beat Florida 3-1, and that also has to stand for something. So the way I look at this is just deciding. So obviously I'm going to put Toronto, as of right now, a little bit to the right of Florida. And the only other question is, do you put Florida ahead of Minnesota? Or sorry, do you put Toronto ahead of Minnesota? And when I look at that, I just don't see how you could, because again, both of the teams are 1-1, but Minnesota's most impressive victory is against Dallas, and Toronto's most impressive victory is against Florida. So this is how I have it settled as of right now. Again, we're playing 20-man matches over the course of Super Week, so this could all change. We'll see what ends up happening, but right now, my 4th team is 100 Thieves. My 5th team is the Minnesota Rocker. My 6th team is the Toronto Ultra. My 7th team is the Florida Mutineers. So down in the comments below, do you agree? Do you disagree? Would you have them switched around? I feel like this is pretty solid, but things could always change, right? So that's sorting 4 through 7 in my power rankings. Now, let's take a look ahead at some of the matches that I cannot wait to watch as we move forward throughout Super Week. First one that I want to talk about here is the matchup between Toronto and Chicago. And again, we did mention this just a tiny bit in the segment Movers and Shakers, but this is just a massive matchup here, because it could have not only who gets the 2 seed, but it could also have implications for who ends up actually dropping down and not even being in winner's bracket. So we can go through and we can talk about, okay, OpTic's going to be the 2 seed. Let's just go ahead. Let's shoo them in. But there's nothing that guarantees them a spot there. And this is one where if you're Toronto, you win this matchup, you're almost guaranteeing yourself a spot in winner's bracket, because you would have already beaten Florida. Yes, didn't go your way against Atlanta, but if you beat Chicago, that's 2 wins against 2 of the harder matchups that you have in this group. So if I'm Toronto, I'm coming out, I'm looking to absolutely go crazy in this matchup, because if they earn this victory, they're going to be in the winner's bracket of that first major. And the question for me in this matchup is going to be, will OpTic be able to hold their own when it comes to search and destroy, because we saw, now again, I know it was against Atlanta, and Scump mentioned this when he talked about it, that he just always felt like he was in the wrong spot. He was slow getting to a location. He wasn't quite where he's used to other people being when it comes to search and destroy, right? If you're on offense and search and destroy, you're running forward, defense is coming at you. There's normally that choke point where you know where the other players are going to be, and that was just a little bit off. That's one of the things that Scump talked about. So, again, my biggest question is going to be, what's going to happen in search and destroy? Because I'm not 1,000% sure that Toronto can hang with OpTic in a lot of those respawns, especially in hardpoint. Control, anything can happen when it comes to control. It's who's going to get lucky and who's going to get just one of those team gunfights. That's really big when it comes to control. But if OpTic comes out and they drop map 1, if they drop that hardpoint, I think all of a sudden it gets a lot harder for them to end up winning this matchup, Toronto versus Chicago. Second match that I have as we go ahead and start to preview is Florida versus Atlanta. Now, again, if you're Florida, you need another victory here to try to inch your way up into that winner's bracket, because, again, they came out and the first matchup that they had didn't go their way, right? So it is, or no, it did go their way. Sorry. So they came out. The reason why I said that is because it just didn't seem like it went their way, because they did end up dropping that first map to LAG, and from there it just didn't seem like it was going to go their way, but they did recover. But they came out, they did get that victory, and again, if they want to be a squad that makes that jump, that tries to get into that winner's bracket, it's going to be tough, right? There's nothing saying, if I'm just sitting back and I'm trying to think of what's the path to victory that Florida has to go through and earn a victory over Atlanta, they're one of those teams I just don't even really know how you do it, right? Because, like, for example, if you're taking a peek at, let's say, Minnesota. If you're playing Minnesota, you have to win the hard points and the control. That's the path to victory. They're going to be extremely tough to beat in search and destroy. When I try to think that way in terms of Atlanta, Atlanta is nasty in search and destroy. We just saw them 12-1 OpTic in search and destroy across 2 maps. But Atlanta is also nasty in all of the respawns. They just had a 3-1 victory over Toronto, and the control against Toronto was an absolute bloodbath. So when I'm looking at this, I think that it's important because we're trying to figure out, where does Florida fit in? Are they the real deal? Are they the potential team that could go ahead and make that winner's bracket out of this group? We would probably just assume that it's going to be OpTic, Atlanta, and that third, it seems like it's going to be easier, like we talked about in movers and shakers. Probably going to be a little bit easier for Toronto to be the squad that ends up coming through there. But this is a massively important matchup, because if they're able to win this, now they may or may not have a spot reserved for them in the winner's bracket. Third matchup here, which I'm not saying it's going to be a victory, but it's a storyline I'm going to be watching, is New York versus Dallas. So the major storyline here, obviously, is Clayster playing his old team. It didn't go their way in the kickoff weekend. Now, again, if you're Dallas, this is one of those scenarios where you really do want to try to get your bragging rights right now while you can, because some of the news that I saw over the course of the last week is that Hydra did get his visa approved, which means you have Hydra that's going to start playing for New York. And if he ends up coming under the tutelage of Clayster, ends up being anywhere close to what Shotzi and Illy were, the young guns last year on Dallas under Clayster, now all of a sudden this team is not quite the pushover that it might have been before. So if I'm Dallas, I think that they probably win this match, and they win this match pretty easily. But I want to make sure that I'm getting it done now, because if you end up waiting, things could go the different way, especially if you're talking 2 or 3 months from now, once New York has some time to get together, play together, develop some chemistry. But overall, I think Clay in this matchup from the very first weekend, I know they only had one match, but Clayster was an absolute animal in that first match. I think he had like a 1.33 KD overall. Clay is just super good. He's that in-game leader. He's that hype man. He does all the intangible things that you want to see out of somebody like that. I just don't think that they're ready yet. And the other big storyline for me that has me a little bit worried for New York moving forward is that Mac was not the Mac from last year. He did not play super well. And if I'm New York, he has to be your second best player, right? If you're thinking about how is New York going to end up handling basically the course of this year, Mac has to play really well because you have Hydra and Zuma's not there. So you brought up Diamond Con. Mac has to be, and he's a super young player. He came in last year, was a rookie last year for New York. But Clayster, we know what we're going to get. Mac, we also have to know what we're going to get, and I'm not quite sure that's there yet. So I think this will be a Dallas victory, but I'm intrigued, and I can't wait to watch it just to see how things develop. Next on our list here is Florida versus Chicago, and again, if we're talking about these two teams and we're really trying to decide here, like who's going to end up getting that third spot, I think this is easily a match that Florida could end up winning. I'm not saying they will. In fact, in my predictions, I took OpTic in this matchup, but when it comes to this, Skies and Awakening have by far been the best two on Florida. And if you're just talking about matchups, Skies Awakening against Dashy Formal. Dashy has been absolutely unbelievable so far this year, but I would say just based off of performances so far, that's a matchup that could probably be pretty close. Now, where things get stretched out a little bit is which Slacked and which Neptune are you going to get? Because when those two have not played great, like in the first hard point against LAG, they just didn't have much to show for that performance in that first hard point. But when they started to turn it around, it didn't even really look like LAG deserved to be in the same lobby as Florida after that occurred. So that's one of those things where if they show up, now Envoy has looked absolutely nasty. As you're going to see here towards the end of this clip that you're watching right now, you see Atlanta trying to capture that last zone right here. It's 2-2. Whoever ends up winning this map or this round ends up winning this map. And you're going to see Envoy come in, just get a massive two-piece. He does get another kill after that. And he's the biggest reason, and that's who Envoy is, right? He is OpTic's MVP candidate. Again, we never know which Scump you're going to get. If Scump comes out in Fries, they are super tough to beat. But here in a moment, so you see Dashy get a kill. Right there is one from Envoy. And again, it's just which Envoy are you going to get? Because if he shows up and if he's absolutely lights out, they are super tough to beat. So we'll see what happens. I do think Chicago ends up winning this, but I highlighted Florida so much in this matchup and their matchup against Atlanta because if they can just make one of these upsets happen, now they have a path to the winner's bracket all of a sudden. And if they win this one, that could even put Chicago in trouble. Who knows if Chicago ends up being through also if they don't end up winning this one. So we'll see what happens. The last one that I have here, which could have massive implications, is LA Thieves versus Dallas. So again, we did talk a little bit about the schedule earlier, but just in reference real quick, right now Minnesota is 1-1 because Minnesota lost to LA Thieves. Right now Dallas is 1-1 because Dallas lost to Minnesota. If LA Thieves lose this matchup here, they will be 2-1, but what that does is it gives the top three teams in that group each one loss. So if I'm LA Thieves sitting at 2-0 right now, if they win this matchup and go to 3-0, in my mind, they're the number 1 seed, and they get that. Not only are they in winner's bracket, but they also get that first round bye in that first major. That would be a massive position to be in. However, if you're Dallas, now all of a sudden, because you already lost to Minnesota, and Minnesota already played 2 of the toughest teams in that group, if Dallas loses this and they end up with 2 losses, I'm just not sure that Minnesota is going to get another loss, because Minnesota has Seattle, New York, and London left. I'm not sure any of those 3 teams can really compete with Minnesota. So this, if we're just talking about the implications overall, I know we touched on it a little bit, but I think that the implications here are just absolutely through the roof. If you're Dallas, you 1,000% have to get a victory here. If you're LA Thieves, you don't necessarily need a victory here. Sure, it is the prime time matchup Sunday night, the last matchup of Super Week. All eyes are going to be on these 2 teams. But on Friday, LA Thieves has London, and on Wednesday, LA Thieves has Seattle. So if I'm LA Thieves, I don't know. It doesn't seem like moving forward, they're probably going to win those matches. They're going to be 4-0 heading into that last matchup. They're going to be in the winner's bracket. Yes, there will be some pressure on their shoulders to go ahead and get this victory and get that number 1 seed so that they can get the first round bye. I'm just not 1,000% sure it'll happen here. When it came to my predictions, I did predict that Dallas is going to end up winning this match. I just think that the loss to Minnesota, and they did not play well. Hugh played great, of course. Hugh was the best player throughout the entirety of opening weekend. So Hugh played fantastic, but you didn't get the performance out of Krim. Krim did not look very good on that opening weekend. He was by far their worst player on that first weekend. And you didn't get the performances out of Shotzi and Illy that you really wanted to get also. So I think that that loss to Minnesota for Dallas was enough for them to just, okay, let's reset. Let's think about this overall. Let's get back to the grind. Let's really try to improve on the things we have to improve on. And I think you're going to see a different Dallas this weekend after they go through and again, Dallas gets a victory against LA Thieves, and that's their last match before the first weekend. I'm saying look out, because if they get that victory, they're going to have momentum. They're going to be feeling themselves. They're going to be thinking, okay, I'm back. Let's get to it. I think that could be tough for the rest of the field going into that first major. Last topic I wanted to talk about today is schedule changes. So when it comes to schedule changes, we know that everything that happened in Texas pushed forward that second week of matches into the third week, which is why we have Super Week, which we have right now. But in all, I really just want to talk about the schedule as a whole. So if we go back to opening weekend, listen, I get it. The times to begin with are really odd. If you're talking about the starting times on a Thursday, those Thursday matches are at 3 p.m. Eastern Time and 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and they end around 6 Eastern Time, and I think, okay, what do I do now? Do I watch a movie? Do I grind some Warzone? Do I play League Play? Like, what do I do, right? It just seems like it's a weird spot, and I know they have to be in that spot because they do have to cater a sixth of the Call of Duty League. 2 teams are EU teams. So even them starting at 3 and 4:30, I believe that ends up being 8 o'clock and 9:30 when it comes to EU time. I wish there was a way to just make those matchups be at times where EU teams could watch. So for example, on opening weekend, the first matchup was Minnesota versus LA Thieves. Why can't that one be in prime time, right? Why can't they put that at 8 o'clock on a Friday night or a Thursday night? And then Seattle versus Dallas, same thing. Why couldn't you take those 2 games? They don't have EU squads in them. Now I know fans that are in EU and followers in EU want to watch these, but I just feel like even though the viewership has been so high, think about viewership at 3 p.m. on a Thursday while everybody's still working. I'm lucky to be home by 3 o'clock. And then think about if you took Minnesota versus LA Thieves on a Thursday night, kickoff, the very first match of the new season, very first match for Nadeshot coming back into the CDL. And imagine if that was at prime time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time instead of 3 p.m. I don't know what the answer is. And the second thing that I want to talk about when it comes to schedule changes, and if you've watched the OpTic podcast, they've also talked about this. But the other thing for me is that you watch 2 matches and all right, that's it. And then Friday comes around. Okay, I'm off work. It's the weekend. Can't wait to watch some Call of Duty. You get 2 matches. I don't know. I think that we were a little bit spoiled back in the CWL because you had group play, then you had winners bracket, then you had losers bracket, and you could have Alpha stream, Bravo stream, Charlie stream, Delta stream. There were 4 Call of Duty matches on all of my monitors, and I had stuff to watch the entirety of the weekend. And now I know that it's a more structured league, and I love everything that the CDL is bringing to the competitive Call of Duty scene, except for the fact I want to watch more Call of Duty, and I don't know how that happens. I wish that there could be like regular season matches, and then you get put into a group heading into a major, and then there's group play. For maybe Friday is group play, so you would have an entire day of group play. And then Saturday is the beginning of winners bracket and losers bracket. And then Sunday at the major is the end of winners bracket and the finals and the losers finals and grand finals. I don't know what the answer is. I want to watch more Call of Duty. And again, if you're some of these squads and you want to make a losers bracket run, when you think of losers bracket runs, you think back to, the famous losers bracket run that LA Thieves made. You can't do that this year. You can't do that in the CDL. There's just not enough time to settle in and get focused and, okay, we lost, but let's go on a hot streak here through losers bracket. You're really just, that option's not there. And I think that's taking something away in terms of storylines. It's taking something away from the players that are in the CDL. But I also think that ultimately it takes something away from us as the viewership, because we want to watch more Call of Duty. And the way that the schedule is, it just doesn't allow even those Thursday matches. Push those Thursday matches back to Friday. Have 3 matches on Friday, and then have, 4 matches on Saturday. Give us a longer Saturday where it doesn't necessarily matter so much in terms of bedtime for teams that are in the EU and fans that are trying to watch over there, and then just have the 2 matches on Sunday. But get rid of the Thursday, stack the Friday and the Saturday, and then have, your matches on Sunday. So I don't know. When it comes to schedule changes and what you would like to see, put it down in the comments below. I'm interested to see, do you guys kind of agree with where I'm at? Do you disagree? Would you not make the changes? Let me know. I'm interested to see what the pulse of the community is. And last but not least, for my final thoughts, the tagline at the bottom says it. The first major is right around the corner. We're there. It's really weird to think about because the game released so early. We've had 4 to 5 months of build up, and then now we have some matches, and you think, wow, there's 3 weeks of matches to get us to that first major, but it's finally upon us. And as you watch the rest of Super Week here, just try to key in on what's going to happen with the seeds in the group that has Dallas and LA Thieves and Minnesota. Who's going to get the 1? Who's going to get the 3? When it comes to the other group that has Atlanta, so Group B that has Atlanta, OpTic, Toronto, Florida, when you're thinking of those 4 teams, one of them have to be out. Atlanta's already going to be in that winners bracket because of their victories that they've had so far. But Toronto plays OpTic. Florida plays OpTic. Toronto already beat Florida, which gives them a little bit of an easier path. But what's going to happen there? One of those teams has to be dropped down to losers bracket. So that's another really awesome storyline that you guys can look forward to heading into the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday matches of Super Week. But with that, that's going to wrap up episode 2 of the OE. If you guys are new around here, let me know what you think. Again, are you loving this new sort of format for the videos? Again, we're trying to put a little bit more effort and a little bit more quality into the videos, so hopefully you guys are enjoying them. I really do enjoy making a video like this where we have different sections and different segments, and we can talk about power rankings, and we can talk about who's going to make losers bracket, winners bracket. We can recap some of the best matches, preview some of the best matches coming ahead. So any comments you guys have, put them down below. If you're new around here, make sure you hit that subscribe button. New videos every single week. And with that, thank you guys so much. We will see you in next week's OE.